A man rescued a fawn with an arrow wound and an orphan bear cub, bringing them both into his home. Initially, the two wild animals regarded each other with suspicion, but under the same roof and with their compassionate owner, they soon became inseparable friends. Todd had a deep love for animals and nature from a young age. His parents often took him on forest picnics where he watched deer, rabbits, and squirrels from a distance. Enchanted by these sights, Todd dreamed of one day living close to the forest to immerse himself in nature daily. After completing school, Todd became a ranger in a national park, allowing him to spend all of his time outdoors, caring for trees and assisting lost tourists. In his free moments, Todd studied local wildlife, including deer, bears, lynxes, and more. At 35, Todd decided to fulfill his long-held dream of living near the forest. He sold his city apartment and bought a small, cozy house on the forest's edge. Elated by the fresh pine scent and the morning songs of birds, Todd felt truly at peace and in harmony with nature. One early morning, while strolling around his yard, Todd heard unsettling sounds like a faint child's moan. Following the noises, he discovered a small fawn in his backyard with an arrow lodged in its hind leg. The fawn, clearly in distress and unable to move properly, was in urgent need of help, and Todd knew it wouldn't survive without immediate care. Carefully approaching the wounded animal, Todd extended his hands, trying to calm the fawn with a quiet and gentle voice. The fawn initially tried to run away, but then understood the man meant no harm. Todd quickly pulled the arrow out of the fawn's wound, trying to cause as little pain as possible. Then he treated the wound with antiseptic and bandaged it. Knowing the wounded fawn wouldn't survive alone in the forest, Todd decided to take it home until it recovered. He made an improvised bed for the little one in a large box and started feeding it milk from a bottle. At first, the fawn was afraid of the man, but over time, it got used to its rescuer and seemed to even consider him a foster parent. Over the next few weeks, Todd diligently cared for the fawn. He regularly cleaned and re-bandaged its wound and cleaned the room to make the fawn as comfortable as possible. It was amusing to watch the timid animal, once it got used to its surroundings, start to playfully hop around the house, nuzzling its savior. As time passed, Todd grew more attached to his little pet. Deep down, he knew the fawn's place was in the forest, but he wasn't ready to let it go just yet. He named the fawn Rudolph and decided to wait until it was fully healed. One day, while Todd was walking in the forest with his faithful dog Archie, the dog suddenly barked and dashed into the bushes. Todd followed and was surprised to find a whining bear cub on the forest edge. There was no sign of the mother bear nearby, so Todd decided to wait a bit, knowing how dangerous an adult bear could be. However, after an hour or two, the lost mother never showed up. Todd's heart went out to the tiny creature, and he decided to take the bear cub home. On the way, he stopped at a store and bought baby formula. At home, Todd fed the cub from a bottle and laid it to sleep in a box lined with soft blankets. A few days later, Todd decided to introduce the fawn, Rudolph, to the new furry resident. He understood that the meeting of a predator and prey could end badly, as they were naturally hunter and prey, so he was ready to intervene at the first sign of aggression. When Rudolph first saw the bear cub, he froze in confusion and fear. The bear cub growled at first, but then stared at the fawn with interest. The bear cub slowly approached Rudolph, and the two began to cautiously sniff each other. Todd was relieved that the bear cub showed no aggression, just trying to understand what this unusual creature living with him was. After a few days, the bear cub and fawn became much friendlier. The cub and fawn even licked each other, strengthening their bond to the delight of their kind owner. Soon, this unusual pair became inseparable. The bear cub, named Baloo, quickly adapted to the new home. During the day, he played and frolicked with Rudolph, and at night, he slept soundly in his spacious box. Todd tried to provide him with the best possible conditions, buying various toys and treats. Sometimes, Todd doubted his decision to keep the bear cub. After all, it was a rather dangerous animal, but seeing the tender friendship between the two creatures born to be enemies, he understood he had done the right thing. A few weeks later, the bear cub became as tame and affectionate as Rudolph. He allowed Todd to scratch his soft belly and pick him up, and when Todd went to work, Baloo missed him and eagerly awaited his return. During these times, Archie wagged his tail energetically, trying to cheer up his new friends. The dog would lick the faces of the fawn and bear cub, inviting them to play together in the yard. Rudolph and Baloo would joyfully hop and run around the well-kept lawn, while Archie barked and circled around them, sharing their excitement in this fun game. Sometimes, the four-legged mischief makers would run into Todd's flower garden and start carefully sniffing the fragrant buds. Of course, Archie would quickly chase them out to avoid the wrath of their owner. In the evenings, when Todd came home from work, the three furry friends would rush to meet him, wagging their tails and jumping with joy. Todd would immediately embrace all three, happy to have such a big and friendly family. Then Todd would serve his pets a delicious dinner. Tender branches and hay for the fawn, Archie's favorite canned food, and for Baloo, he cooked buckwheat porridge with dried fruits. So the days passed in Todd's new home. Sometimes funny incidents happened, like when the bear cub swallowed Todd's shoe and struggled to get rid of it, or when Rudolph got tangled in freshly washed sheets that Todd had left to dry in the yard. But these minor troubles only added humor and joy to the man's life. Months passed, and Toad's pets grew noticeably. The fawn, Rudolph, became a handsome deer with magnificent antlers, and the bear cub, Baloo, turned into a respectable, plump animal but remained as friendly as ever, like a giant plush teddy bear. Archie was still a tireless instigator, never letting his friends get bored. Gradually, Todd began to think about how the deer and bear would eventually have to return to the forest. He worried about whether they would manage on their own in the wild after living so long in a human home. On the other hand, Todd understood that keeping wild animals at home was too selfish on his part. To help his pets regain and strengthen their survival skills, Todd started taking them to the nearby forest during his work shifts. Sometimes he also took Archie to watch over the playful duo. Todd showed the fawn edible plants and taught the bear cub to find roots and berries. The sight was very amusing. Rudolph would munch on grass and leaves with gusto, while his bear friend would follow him, trying the same treats and grimacing at their strange taste. This went on for several months until one sunny day, Todd decided it was finally time to release his pets into the wild. With a heavy heart, he took Rudolph and Baloo deep into the forest, far from human settlements. Todd tried not to cry, knowing that saying goodbye to true friends is always very hard. At first, the deer and bear didn't want to leave Todd. They circled around him, lying down and wagging their tails as if begging him not to abandon them. This moved Todd deeply, and he barely held back his tears, understanding that this was best for the wild animals. After several tries, Todd finally managed to send Rudolph and Baloo away with firm gestures and loud shouts. As he watched them disappear into the forest, he quietly cried, feeling a deep sadness. It was hard to say goodbye after so many months together. Archie also seemed sad, tucking his tail and looking at Todd as if to say sorry for not being able to help. When Todd returned home that evening, the empty house felt very lonely. Toys and beds were left behind, reminding him of the joy and life that used to fill the house. The smell of honey and hay made his eyes water. That night, he couldn't sleep, hoping that Rudolph and Baloo might find their way back. The next day, Todd went back to the forest, hoping to catch a glimpse of his former pets. He was overjoyed to see Rudolph and Baloo on the edge of the forest. The two animals, still inseparable, wagged their tails and rushed to greet him. Todd sat on the grass, hugging them and taking in their familiar scent. Tears of happiness flowed as he realized they hadn't forgotten him and had come to say goodbye. Todd felt reassured that, united by their friendship, his pets would thrive in the wild. It was a touching and unforgettable moment for Todd, one he would cherish for the rest of his life.